Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode with Design with Destiny, whereby we have someone amazing today joining us. She's going to be walking us through one of the essential parts in your entire design process, handing them off to your engineers. I have Dimeji with me on the call. I'm going to give him a second now to introduce himself, and then we'll dive right into it. How are you doing, Dimeji? Nice to have you.
Hi, Destiny. I'm doing all right. Uh, it's great to be here and to talk about design in whichever way we're going to lead into it. So, yeah, my name is Oladimeji, and I'm a, I'm a father of one. Recently became a father, and it's been a very nice experience. And trying to just juggle that with entrepreneurship and still sort of balancing out design, which can be quite tasking. Um, I think I'll say I've been a designer for roughly 13 years now, but then focused fully on UX 8 years ago. And I've been, going all out with that because I realized that it's very easy to design what looks visually appealing, but
Yeah,
then to make it work or to have the users understand how it happens without having to speak to anybody on the team or having to read, how to's makes a product work better. And studying architecture just made me understand more that function first over what it
aesthetic.
looks like. And yeah, it's just been beautiful. So I think architecture made UX design more interesting for me. And yeah, it's been awesome. So
That's super amazing. I know I followed some of your works back in the past. Your attention to details, everything is top notch. And we started this video series to help designers not just to understand the visual part, like the spoken part. There are a lot of materials out there that they don't take designers into those particular files, and
yeah.
that's what we're hoping to achieve with this. Whenever you're ready, if you want to. Would you like to share your screen?
Oh, okay. We're
Yes.
jumping right in. Okay. So I think what I basically have is um, so I think I work in a way that it's more of, yeah, we'll show you what it is, but then also talk more into detail of these things because I feel like
Yes.
design knowledge is lacking a lot, and people just feel like let me just listen to someone on Twitter and I'll know what to do. But it's more than that. Um, yeah, so I'm going to share my screen in a bit, but I think to give context when it
Yeah.
comes to ending of the process, basically, it doesn't start when the design is almost completed and you're thinking of the developer or the engineer, in question. It starts from the beginning of the design, even from when you've received the brief or you've had that first what's it called again? Whatever sprint or whatever meeting you have to talk about what this project really is about. It should be a thing at the back of the designer's mind to start thinking what is going to be my role eventually when the engineer is going to sort of come on board with this project. And I feel like what makes it beautiful is starting with the engineer in mind. Um, I've had instances where I'm working on a project, I've done the user experience, research, and all of those things, and then I'm doing wireframing. But then I realized that there's some things that might not look it looks good, but then I need a technical person to look at it from a different perspective and sort of let
For
me
the
know.
functionality
At that
part.
point, yeah, at that point, the handing off has already started. You're already thinking of this person that is going to take over because you don't want them to keep coming back to you maybe a month after you've sort of given them whatever files you're trying to deliver. And they're still
Yeah.
asking you very basic questions like, what's happening with this hamburger menu, or what's happening with this, or what's happening with that? What's the flow between all of this? So is to start to change that mindset that you're not designing just to make it look good or in isolation. It needs to be with these people in mind. And sometimes they even give you more uh, actionable plans or steps, even in the design process. So, yeah. And I
Would
think,
you say like there's a difference in probably the way like an indie designer might, prepare their handoff opposed to the way like someone working within like an organization, like you have that daily
yeah,
interaction with.
They're
Yeah,
very different. So I think the first like 5 years of my UX design, I was independent. So I'll just get the documents or the documentation ready for the client. I don't know the developer, so I didn't really take that part seriously. But the first time I worked in a setting that had structure, that was when I knew that, oh my God, I'm lacking in design documentation and preparation for development or for whatever they would do after I do the design.
yeah,
And that's when I started to learn that it starts with documentation, and then you need to choose collaboration over working in silos. Independent designers do this a lot. And I feel like when you get to the point where you need to test and iterate, it becomes a problem because if you've not started that process from the onset, it becomes very difficult and it makes design process fall through the cracks. So yeah. So for me, I think starting with documentation, but then with that documentation is as simple as how you organize your files, even outside of Figma or whatever design tool you use, how you organize your what's it called again? All of these desktop files, right?
yeah.
You have a folder where you keep all of these
That's
things,
the
whether it's office laptop or your personal one, have it properly documented. If I show you folders I use for a typical UX project, I've got like 16 different folders in just UX, and then you now have other things, and just for one project, so that it's easy for you to find what you're looking for without stressing too much. So yeah, collaboration also makes a lot of sense. So it's good to have like walkthrough meetings to ensure mutual understanding. A lot of the
yeah.
times, engineers have a mind of their own. They have other things that they are thinking about when it comes
Factoring.
to execution. But then, if you get to know these things beforehand, it will save you a lot of stress. And it's important to also discuss the nitty gritty of how developers question what you do. you know. And
Yeah,
I've been making reference to architecture a lot. There were times when like structural engineers will tell you this thing cannot work. Basically, the same way engineers will tell you this thing cannot work. And there's a reason why they're making those queries because they want to understand how did you go about building this and what is the implementation. So,
yeah.
do you have hints into that? It makes their work easier. It makes your own process less strenuous, and there won't be clash eventually. So, yeah. So I'll just go into Figma now. I'll share my
Okay.
screen. Yeah, and it's a very basic project, so it's not like it has all of the things in this life.
If we
Um,
wanted to use if we used a full blown project, we wouldn't end this discussion today.
trust me,
We
trust
wouldn't
me.
end the discussion. Just before you dive into Figma, I want you to talk a little bit about photo pool. Um,
Okay,
I saw
all
it.
right.
It's a game
Yeah.
changer. I just want you to just briefly, what is photo pool?
So Photopol is an event photo management platform and a point of view camera. So it's two things in one, right? And I'll just tell the story briefly. So I was scrolling through Instagram that day, and there was this blogger who posted, like a very popular person on Instagram, who posted about her wedding, and she lost, like, photographer lost photos to the wedding, and he's telling her to come to an hotel, 10 days later to take additional photos, and she was just suspicious, like, what's going on? So eventually, the guy confessed and said, "I lost all the photos to your wedding,"
Oh my god.
and she said she didn't care so much about the photos of herself. It was more of the people that came to the wedding, what the experience was like, their perspective of what was happening, and all of that. And I realized that from my own wedding, that was the same thing I sort of enjoyed the most. People that came, seeing their faces and all of that. And it just sort of popped up in my mind like, there are disposable cameras people use for weddings in those days.
Yeah.
What if there's a digital version? And I mean, there were a lot of them, right? A lot of them that are out there, but then they have so many limitations. And we just decided that, you know what, let's do the most basic form of it. If this happened to someone that how do you solve it? So we thought about, okay, Google Drive, create the Google Drive, share it with people who came to the wedding. I mean, it wouldn't really work because you would have to be uploading photos from different places. It would be
You would
very
also
messy.
have a Google
Yeah.
account.
And then there was a time someone thought about WhatsApp, create a WhatsApp group. But then eventually we landed on, okay, what if we are able to have a server that we just design a very small model for operating a camera, and then you click the photos stored in that server and link it with a QR code that takes you to a particular event site. So it just came out of nowhere, really. Like, how do we make sure that event photos are well documented and it doesn't have to go through the stress of reduced quality and all of that? And started working on the UI UX, and then got developers involved, and basically it's where it is now. So Photopool is an event photo management platform and a point of view camera. So an event host can just create an event on the app, and once they create an event, they get a unique code and a QR code that they can share with other persons. Those ones click it, they join the event, and on the day the event is happening, they just bring out their phones, take a number of pictures, and it instantly uploads to the event
Oh,
album. And yeah, recently we've been working on version 2 to involve AI.
nice.
So we've hosted like 5 events, high profile events with close to like 10,000 photos uploaded and over 1,000 users without any marketing. And the realization is that if you have an event with 5,000 photos, how would I find my pictures? So we've introduced this thing that, photo recognition. It scans your face, and
Yeah,
then you go through all the images within that album, and then just picks out wherever you've appeared. So there's sometimes where you don't even know you appeared in a photo, and it
yeah.
just brings it for you. So yeah, that's photo putting in a nutshell. Still working
I
on it.
I feel like that is going to be a serious game changer. I'll be sure to leave a link to the photo pool in the
Yeah,
descriptions for everyone. Check it. I
that'll be
checked it out
amazing.
myself, and but I didn't want to steal your thunder. I wanted you to talk about the product. Yes, so it's an amazing one. It's an amazing one.
Awesome. I mean, I would have actually maybe prepared a very short photo poll walkthrough. No, not walkthrough, like using the handover thing, but I think I'll just
Yeah,
use this for life here.
no worries, no worries. We can always have another session for
I
that.
don't want someone to go and see version 2 before it launches.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
And definitely, like, even if we do have that, we can always delay the recording to come out after your version 2 has launched. So
Okay, no
that would
worries.
be, yeah, that would be something we'll discuss over another time.
All right. Okay, so okay, share screen. Is this screen or presentation? Which one do I choose?
I think it's screen.
Screen. Okay,
Yeah,
I have to choose
so it should.
hmm, window. Okay. Share. I don't know if you can see the screen.
Yeah,
Okay. So this is a sample project. It's like an expense tracker, and the whole idea for this was just to find a way to, like, I'm terrible at money sometimes. So
that's
what
real.
can be done? How do you manage? And I mean, if you live in a country that everything is tap, it's very difficult for you to track what's going out easily. So that's just the whole idea of this. But I think for me, the main thing was to first undo it in a way that everything is well presented to whoever is using the who has access to this file. And I think my first thing is auto, auto annotations, and then naming everything properly. If I zoom out, you see that everything is like well labeled, and you have everything in blocks. So you're looking for onboarding, it's just right there. You need the next level steps, it's right there. And one other thing I try to do is share the user flow every single time I'm working. So even before I start to speak to engineers, this is the first thing I share with them. So having a broad knowledge of, okay, this is what the user flow looks like. Okay, maybe to help them in understanding what the design eventually would look like. And from here, it's quite easy to just walk through this together. And then from here, I noticed that most times engineers will sort of spot errors or
In the flow.
loopholes or places where it won't just work well. And it helps us to work better and not mess things up. So from here, after all the tracking and everything, I think I try to. make sure that interaction is very hands on. So in interaction with engineers, nobody really says this, but then I feel like they know a lot more than you.
Yeah.
And people feel like, oh, engineers is just to sit down and do Figma, or no, and do their own thing. No, it's a lot more than that. Like they're looking at the implementation and making sure that there are minimal back and forth without deviations from the original thing that the project is all about. And I think I delved into service design a little bit in my
Yeah.
experience, and I realized that you have to play the role of researcher, designer, sometimes developer, or maybe like you're just like a monitoring developer to understand the full scope of the project and then business success as well, which means that you can't just put things anywhere. If it's not well, labeled, if it's not well put together, if it's not visually cohesive as well, it can be very, 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 very upsetting. Like I have a different project that if I show you, this was like one of my first detailed projects outside of um, working as an independent designer,
Yeah.
and the level of stress it took me to be able to like arrange these things. It was, and that was because the project was already done. I was not trying to arrange everything myself. I mean, now there's AI that can easily help you pull things together, but they're not
Yeah.
trustworthy. So follow through the process. I feel like diligence and being very detailed is like the very first thing. No one talks about how, because of the way you presented your documentation, it can mislead engineers, and nobody is going to really care or whether you did really nice designs or whatever. What they care most about is if developers can implement the design with minimal feedback or minimal back and forth and no deviations, that project isn't a success.
Yeah.
If they come to you once and you can easily clear them on everything that they need, then that's fine. So yeah, so that was one part. And then I think for me, the next thing I sort of try to do most times is I feel like Figma file can't really explain everything. It's more
Mhm.
into the way you talk about it. Demonstration, like hands-on demo, is also important, right?
Yeah. Like a walkthrough, right?
Yes. So, and I'll recommend 3 to 4 walkthroughs from the start of the project to the end. The first walkthrough basically should be around the user flow you've designed and the research that has gone into your work. Because if they don't understand that research point of view, there are things that stakeholders don't consider in general that the UX designer is thinking about back and forth. But then one thing is engineers too are thinking about it alongside you. So
Yeah.
if there is no room for rubbing off ideas and sort of bouncing things off each other, handing off will be very difficult. But if there is that sync right from the start, then it makes sense. So in the demonstration, I think walk through your design layers and grouping. So when they need to find screens and different things, it's not difficult. Your annotations and specifications, that's also important. And I feel like all those useful text, for example, when I'm using FigJam, I try to just add this legend to make it easy to know, okay, why are these connections this way? What the task flow is, and then what the start and end is. So you see that the legend sort of helps to tell what the flow is and what the direction is. And the same thing in the design. My layers are sort of grouped in an order.
Okay.
Mostly people will put onboarding at the top, but it's actually the last thing because usually when you click, the first thing you see on the top here, I think it's weird for me anyway because I noticed that some engineers work from bottom to top. It's easier that
Oh.
way for the kind of person me I've worked with. So
Okay.
it's also important to understand the kind of engineers
Type
you're
of
working with.
engineer you're working with.
Yes, because it makes your entire work easier when you know that, okay, this person will first come here and then look at everything. They will look at everything before they even start asking you questions. Can they understand it themselves? If an engineer can understand your entire design and the way you've documented it by themselves, that's a success.
Yeah.
So, and then I think the last thing in that demonstration will now be your prototyping links, all those click throughs, the interactive elements you've placed, everything. Show them everything, like walk them through everything so that nobody's asking you, oh, where is this, where is that. I think that's important. But in the middle of all of this, in those meetings, I feel like the meetings shouldn't only be about yourself.
Okay.
Allow them use the prototype. You know, I think I haven't really used any. So there's this tool. I don't know if they still use it. It's called Look Back.
Look back.
Yeah. So I used to use that. Just put the design up there, and then it's like what's this thing called again? It's like Loom, but then this one is specific to UX and testing designs. So you can easily see where whoever is on that screen, where they're clicking the most, where they have drop offs and stuff like that. So I
Oh,
use that
to
oftentimes.
understand
And when
where
I see
they
that,
kind of have that
yeah,
confusion around.
exactly. So when I say that there are lots of drop offs around here, it's easy for me to just message the engineer and be like, okay, I noticed this. What do you think is going on there? It also
I
helps me to improve the design,
I
which
think
is
we should
cool.
we should suggest this to Figma actually.
Yeah,
It,
like you can
it's
easily
going to
like
be really
honestly,
amazing.
it would be so good. It would be so good. Like you can check. So somebody is trying something and clicking, it's not clicking. There's a reason why it's not clicking. So you should
Yeah,
raise the bug in that area. But I mean, let's see. I feel like Figma is becoming this very rounded tool that if they put too much inside, it'll make people confused. But at the same
yeah.
time, it's necessary to be in there. So yeah. Um Now for me, because of the way you've sort of grouped everything like this, preparing the assets for export will be so difficult.
I noticed something on your board now. I
All right.
noticed you have some, like if you look at the view records, they're kind of
Yeah.
darker.
Yeah.
Was that intentional or is it just like visual separation?
So if you notice, every single thing is 1 1. Like you have just individual blocks
Yep.
for onboarding, for record expenses, and then when you get to view record tabs, there are a number of them. So separating them, if I put them, they'll just be sitting by themselves because now there's view record tabs for search for keywords, there is edit record, and then there's apply filters. But if you come here, you can see that this one is just individual screens,
Yeah.
all about record expense tab. But here, everything is view records, but then the view records are in different layers. So you have screens that follow each other, and then you now have other screens that don't really direct to this one. So if I don't separate them that way, it will be difficult for the person to understand, okay, this is what I'm talking about, or this is why it's like this. So view record tab for search keywords is different from edit record and is different from applying filters. So that's why they are all separated that way. And it's the same thing for, the additional tabs that would be required. So you have the currency part, the notification, the authentication.
That's
Did you,
that's
did you understand that?
yeah, like because like when I saw it, like I just immediately noticed that okay,
Yeah. So
this
it
must
helps you
look
to tell
related.
that, okay, everything here is about records, the record tabs, but they have different
Different
functions.
segments.
Yeah. So breaking down those functions like I did in the user flow just makes it easy. So you see everything I have here. This is the first line, but then the second line connects to each other in a very weird way. And if it's not here, it sort of breaks the flow. So that's why they are like that. Let me do an edit. Imagine if this was the same color, right, as what I have here. Do you understand it now?
Yes,
Yeah. So that's
yes.
why that yeah. So I mean, I just saw it as a way to make things stand out and not get anybody confused that okay, what's supposed to be here? Is it also part of this? So it's like nesting everything within the same topic together instead of having to create individual ones that's is still within the same screen selections. So yeah, so like as I was saying, preparing my assets now won't be difficult because now I know onboarding is going into one place easily. If I'm trying to do sometimes some developers, like I said, sync with your developer. Some developers will request for everything to be individual. So
When you
If
say individual, what do you mean?
like now, all of these screens as it is, they don't have to be in the same uh some people don't want it to be in the same Figma file.
Okay, you mean like so having different pages
Yeah.
for one
So I
page?
can easily just get everything from onboarding. It goes all in one, everything from expenses. But if they are scattered, it doesn't really help at all. So that's the reason why I arrange things like this. And this is maybe a bit of a preference, but I know people who prefer to have everything this way and it goes all the way to the side. But that way, you would have to zoom a lot before you see everything at a
A lot
glance.
of there's a
This
lot of
way, yeah, like at the glance, I can see everything and it just helps to know, okay. And then visual hierarchy also matters. If you position something here to the side, like, okay, I used to be a visual designer, so maybe that's why.
yes, you're
Like,
still an amazing visual designer.
if I have all of the things left aligned, it just makes life easier. But then imagine everything being like this. Let me just do it. Ah, this is painful. But you know, like if everything is like this, and then I have this on this side, okay, Figma can be weird sometimes. It just doesn't work. Do you
it's
understand what I'm
it's
saying?
it's it's increasing the eye strain and the travel
Yeah.
distance. Now I'm having to look from what's going. It's a lot of eye
It's just
fatigue.
better to look top down, and that makes life
Yeah,
so
yeah.
much easy. So yeah. And I think outside of Figma or all of this, I'll just sort of run through what I've understood with
Okay.
organizing files. First is use consistent naming of your layers, grouping, and elements or components. You know, if
Speaking of naming and layers, just before you get into that, I know
yeah,
like this is also a very sensitive topic, right? And I know you tell us how come up with your layers and all of that, but do you think everything should be named? Every single thing. And I'm saying this because of, let's say, especially newer designers that might have not gotten used to that Figma fatigue. You know, when you work on files for a lot, like it's you're used to it now, but for like maybe newer designers or mid-level designers that haven't gotten yet used to that Figma fatigue, do you think everything needs to be named, every single thing, or what's your?
so I said I was going to share like this is a personal preference, but
Yeah.
I believe it's going to work for a lot of people if they can like get it together early on in their design career. So I'm going to share my screen and just show you like what my file naming system sort of looks like. I think you should be sharing now. Yeah. So I don't know if you see this. So this is my external hard drive, and that's what I carry around everywhere. So it just any
First,
device I'm working on.
I'll tell you, this looks way more organized than mine.
And this is pretty much everything that relates to work for me. And if I open UX design, you see UX project design resources. And if I go inner, and then you start to see, a lot more. So I created this client copy folder that has everything inside. So if I click on client copy, you see design assets, feedback and revision, final deliverables, research and case studies, wireframes, and prototype. The reason why I have it this way is so that if I have a new client I'm working with, I don't need to now go and start deleting what's in one place. The client's copy, I just copy it and rename it to, and that's basically how I feel like it helps to sort of document things. So, and the reason for this is simple. I don't want to have to start looking for something that you don't know, like you can have hundreds of files to go through,
Yeah.
hundreds of screens. And I think the reason why this became important for me early on as a designer was because I used to design UI on Photoshop.
You know,
Oh,
that era was one of
yeah,
my most frustrating times.
it was
It was
frustrating.
it was a hard time. It was a
But
hard time.
I had to learn diligence and discipline from there. Like in Photoshop, I would name all my layers, all my sub layers, all my groups. it just made it easy until Photoshop now made it easy to just click on the screen and you can find the exact element.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just carry that over to every other thing and up to how I name, my files. And your file system sort of gives an insight into the kind of designer you are. If you're not well organized in that area, you can easily miss things out and just mess things up. So, yeah, with naming, I wouldn't say naming is a must, but if you want your life to be easy as a designer, it's a must. And there needs to be consistent naming,
Naming style. Yeah.
yeah, for your layers, for your groups, and for your components. You might not necessarily name screens because if they follow an order, if you can do your prototyping and linking, it might not be necessary.
Yeah.
But to do your handover process really well, please name everything from layers to groups to components and screens. It's important because you don't want someone coming to ask you after 2 months of finishing the project about something that obviously, if they could just see that it was named, they know where it's supposed to fall
You
under.
know, for it. Yeah.
Yeah, then you need to create clearly labeled sections for your flows. Login flow, dashboard, onboarding, like you saw the what I
Yeah.
just presented.
Yeah.
Everything needs to be named. And then you need to separate your working files from finalized designs to avoid version mix-ups. Like what I
Version.
shared is the final version. If I show you the crude ones, oh my god, they are very horrible. Like everything is just scattered everywhere. And that's just the way it is. So now I don't know if you've heard of this before, but it's called interaction red lines,
Yeah.
where the developer needs precise detail on animations, interactions, so that they can easily
It's
replicate
in.
them accurately.
Yeah.
And how I do it, I use Figma and just focus on highlight transitions, overstates, and animations. Those things are very basic, but they really help you. And then adding red lines, maybe clear markers or notes for spacing, for timing, for behavior. All those things really help. And this is where design systems,
Come in
comes
place.
in handy. Yeah. And then if you're now working around complex animations, you can link a Loom video demonstrating what that interaction is doing. It just helps. So, and that's the reason why those walkthroughs are quite important. Now, if I jump into annotation, I feel like I can't remember. Maybe I've seen a video that you did that went viral last year. Yeah, something like that. I think I saw something like that last year, and I was like, I mean, nobody talks about this, and people need to talk about it a lot more.
you know.
So, like,
You know.
do you
Hey.
know how difficult it is to understand how to include micro copies and instructional text in a developer's guide? It's so important.
Yeah.
It's so important.
Yeah.
So,
That's part of the reason why we decided to do this.
yeah,
If you go to a lot of design schools, boot camps, there is not enough time to discuss this element. That these are things you just learn on the job. But then again, not everyone has the opportunity to be with amazing teams or have that experience to do
yeah,
this. And this might be things that are making designers miss that job opportunity. Because if you're hiring a designer now and I open your Figma and
and
I
it's
wouldn't
messy.
even just say anything. I just know. I just know. Yeah, you're not
Yeah,
the guy. You're not the girl. You're not the person,
yeah,
right? But going to that, I wanted to ask you this question, right? Now we're in an age whereby design is exploding, and it's getting to that point where you have the difference between someone starting and an experienced person. The gap is so much
yeah.
that it takes a lot for even newer designers or intermediate designers to breach that knowledge gap and enter that realm of authority and specification. For new designers who want to go into UX now, what is the one advice you want to give such a person that is looking to go
Mm.
into UX? That's the first one. And the second one, these are for people that are already in the field now. What advice would you give them to make them stand out in their specific field, to get that confidence, that ownership that will make set them apart from just every other designer?
So I think for new designers, is the basic focus on the fundamentals. I made a tweet some months ago talking about if you're into design, there are so like there were like 8 things I said you should understand. I'll find that tweet and share it with you.
I'll
You
definitely
know,
link it up here.
principles of design is basic.
Yeah.
Usability is important. But one thing that people don't talk about is accessibility. If you miss accessibility in your design, then every other thing is just messed up. So focus on that part. And there's this book of Stephen Krug, The Design of Everyday Things,
Yeah.
and Don't Make Me Think. Those two very important books that I feel like designers should really dive deep into. But outside of anything, master one tool. Don't try and be a jack of all trades. Master one, you know, and obviously let it be Figma because it's vast. It
Shout
has
out to Figma.
everything. Yeah, you know. But then I think the first one of the first projects you should work on. Don't try and work on things that are amazing that people just who and art. No, design components. As a UX designer, focus on designing components. If you focus on designing components, one thing that makes it work now is those components are supposed to be used in larger designs,
Yeah.
but you are able to become so detailed in designing components that to fit it into something bigger won't be a problem. And responsiveness is also one thing. But I feel like there is too much of design out there. Learn people management, learn communication. Like, how do you communicate your work? That's what we're talking about today. Start from the basics, design decisions, focusing on the reasons behind your choices. And this applies to everybody. But the people that have quite difficult to accept criticism a lot are newer designers,
Yeah.
not even the experienced ones. Because newer designers feel like I'm learning this thing and I'm practicing it. Your feedback should help me improve. No, my feedback should help you understand the reason behind what you're doing. Feedback is not supposed to help you improve. It's supposed to help you rethink your decisions. So, but if someone is giving you feedback to improve, then that person is doing your work for you, and that shouldn't be. So, also, I feel like for me, understand the full product life cycle. Explore how UX fits into product management, how it fits into development, what we're talking about today. But
Yeah.
one part we miss a lot, how it fits into marketing. They need to work hand in hand. And then maybe developers will be happy if I say this. You can ask developers to mentor you if you're a UX designer because they understand more into the processes and the technical constraints, which will help your life better. Asking a UX designer to mentor you will not do you any good because people probably have the same way of thinking. But a developer has a very strict technical way of thinking. If you can have technical know-how and your creative exploration as a UX designer, yeah, you'll be good. Honestly, you'll really be good. But for established people, now there is I've seen people put this in their bio oftentimes. UI UX AI designer, and that's amazing. It just means that you need to deepen your knowledge and your expertise. Don't try and just say, okay, you know it this way, and that's the only way it's going to happen.
So you're saying
Um,
like specialization.
yeah. So I love it when people are generalists, but check most generalists are very very good at one particular thing, but then they
Yeah.
now branch into other things. That's the way it should be. Um, then build a reputation on subject matters like writing articles, giving talks, hosting workshops for established people. Destiny, you're doing it right now. It's amazing because a lot
Ah,
of design knowledge is missing and it's just lost. We need to bring that back. I've just gotten very overwhelmed with a lot of responsibility as
yeah.
someone who is growing that I've stopped doing design teaching. But then this is just letting you in on it. I'm writing a book. It's called Amplify Scale, and it's basically how unicorns sort of use experiences to make the best products, and it's both for designers and founders or whatever whatnot, and it's sort of focused on this peak end role, of experiences, and that's what most companies are applying, but people don't really know about it. So, yeah, hopefully to launch next year,
Hey,
and
I
yeah.
need, if there's a pre-listening, I need to
No
be in.
worries, no worries. I'll definitely share it
I
with
need
you
to
once the
be in on
manuscript
it.
is done.
I
So,
need
and I
to.
mean, if you're open to it, I could also interview you to get your hands-on opinion about UX and how it works in the real world, not just theoretical knowledge.
100,
So,
100%, 100.
yeah.
You know, one thing that's very interesting is I was speaking with a designer yesterday for this video series, and she asked the question that how, and this was for her. She was like, "What do I use to make my UX experience better?" And
Mm.
what I do is I look at physical designs. Physical designs are so amazing. When you look at how a bridge is constructed, when you look at how a tunnel is built, those
I'm an
are
architect, so that's literally
exactly.
what's up in my life right now, honestly. Like
When
the
you look
level of
at
detail.
the accessibilities in washrooms, in bathrooms, you'd
So
oh,
one thing I should tell you is this: I spent a year designing toilets and bathrooms when I was doing architecture, and that's why I said focus on the components. Toilet is small compared to a large building, but spending a year
yeah,
designing toilets gave me this knowledge of detail. Like I have to measure every tile to be sure it fits and it's of the right specification. And then when I'm not preparing the final drawings for the main architect, I have to annotate every single thing. Wall length, wall height, the thickness of the tiles. Oh my god, so much. And that's just for a small project. Now imagine you're not working on something large and you've not been able to master that entry level part. It can be difficult.
it can be
So
difficult.
yeah.
I
And
have,
I
I have,
think
yeah. Go on, go on.
I think one last thing for established persons, two things actually. Master collaboration,
Mm,
learn how to speak the language of stakeholders is important. And then focus on business impact. And maybe if you sort of do a little bit of service design, it would help you understand more into the business impact of design itself because it goes beyond just aesthetics, it goes beyond just user needs. Business goal is also part of it, it's important.
yeah,
And learn the basic metrics of conversion rate, retention, customer satisfaction. How do you showcase ROI in your work? Most established designers miss that, and it can actually steal a lot of how it takes you from just experience to expert. If you can focus on that business impact, it also helps. Like it helps a lot.
man,
um I said there's a lot of it, to be honest. A personal brand is important.
yeah.
Evolving beyond the current industry is also good. So I mean, it's a topic we can't really exhaust, but yeah.
I believe, like, there's so much more to dive in, and there are layers to it. So
Yeah.
this is also for like newer guys to not get overwhelmed with these things takes time. You've been doing this for over 8+ years now. It
Yeah.
takes it takes that time. But I'm going to branch out a little bit out of design, and this is the part of the show whereby we ask three random questions to you. We just
All
want to
right.
get an insight to some deeper thoughts about you. First is, what is the name of that meal that you can eat anytime, any place, anywhere? What is that meal for you?
Ah, um, I have to think about it because I don't have a go-to meal. Uh, but I think right now it'll be pancakes and baked beans with scrambled eggs. I mean, my son loves it, so that's why I've sort of become very
Automatic.
used to it. So
Okay, okay, nice. Pancakes and baked beans. I haven't had those in a while. I haven't had those in a while. But now the second one I'm asking you, who is that design person in this field or in this space that you kind of have looked up to? Who is that person? We want to know who are the people that you're looking up to, especially in the design of things and this design world generally.
hmm.
You had to mention one. I know there might be a couple, but if you
Yeah.
were to mention one.
So this was someone that really made me fall in love with um, the business of design, and that's Bolanle Banwo. I mean, I've been designing for a few years, but then I came across some of our works, I think maybe 2019 or 2018. And at that time, I just understood that, look, this person, there's more to it than just design. This is business and you need to put everything into it. So I understood that. And eventually, 2020, I got the privilege to speak with her on a panel, and I could just understand that this person has wealth of knowledge, not just about design, but about the business of design itself. It goes beyond just design, that business part, So, and learning and actively seeing our content over the years just gives a different perspective shift to what design is. I started to learn design as a way of life before I knew her, but then after I knew her and her works, I was like, okay, there's more to it. So we're not necessarily in the same, because me, I'm focusing on UX now. She's still
Yeah,
in branding, design, visuals, but that's business of design, and it
yeah.
goes beyond just the specific niche you're in. So yeah, that'll be one person definitely.
Shout out to Bonami Bao. Hopefully, we'll reach out and have her over at the program. It would be amazing to have her here. And
That'll be amazing. Yeah,
the final thing is, what is one book you would advise every designer should read?
one book. Hmm. I think I mentioned it already. Design of Everyday Things.
Design of everyday things.
It takes you. I mean, that's for beginners, but if you're an expert or mid or senior or whatever, and you've not read it, please go back, go and read it.
Hmm.
It just doesn't like design is a daily, everyday life thing. And like you said, you look at bridges and all of that. Sometimes I look at the way someone created this,
Yeah,
the lines, like the detail is in everything, and that's where you actually learn design. Sometimes I buy products and I'm just looking at the products like this. Like that's why I really love made by Google products. I can spend hours just admiring how they put it together. I'm like,
the thought that goes into it.
yeah. Even though now I'm sort of fighting Google because there's a weird way they're actually like they're going against their own material design specifications in some cases, and I'm like, but they're the ones that created it, so
I
we can't
mean,
judge them. But yeah, so design of everyday things, yeah, I think that's a necessary one. Yeah, that's Don Norman.
yeah.
Yeah, really amazing book. Yeah.
Man, it's been truly amazing having you over, Dim. I know you're truly busy, a founder, a dad, a designer, an entrepreneur. It's a packed schedule. I really do appreciate you spending and sharing knowledge, especially to help the community grow. We will have you back on this show definitely,
I
and
would love to see that. Yeah.
we are looking forward to your book launch.
Yeah.
Let us know whenever you need, our community, you need us there. We'll be sure to, show up for you. Thank you so much, team, and
Thank you so much for having me. This means a lot. And it's
thank you
been
so
great, chatting with you. You're an amazing host. It didn't feel like a question and answer. It's very free and like the flow was good. And I feel like we need more, not just how to, but like real life scenario things. I made a tweet on Twitter like a few weeks ago talking about how architecture sort of died.
Yeah,
And that was because what you learn in school and the real world applications, they're very far apart. And design is
very
becoming like that. And that's tragic.
very far
So
apart.
yeah. Hopefully more real life case scenarios designers rise up and show the process, not just share screens and what the work looks like. Take us into the behind the scenes, yeah, so much more. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was great doing this.
Thank you so much, Tim. We'll be reaching out to you further. I think you've just given me an amazing title for the our next segment, behind the scenes. Our,
Oh,
our,
that'd be great.
our team will work on that and flesh it up, bring it to fruition. That's taking a lot of weeks and months of planning, and we're really grateful. Thank you. Do
All
enjoy.
right, thank you so much.